Have you ever witnessed a kitchen showdown that changed everything? Head chef humiliates novice black cook, without realizing he would fire him in front of everyone. You're kidding me, right?
Chef Vincent's voice echoed through the restaurant kitchen like thunder, causing all the employees to freeze instantly.
This is what you call Holland sauce.
Kevin Williams, only 23 years old, stood motionless at the center counter, watching the famous chef pour all of his sauce into the trash can with a theatrical and contemptuous gesture. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. 15 pairs of eyes fixed on the humiliation unfolding like a public spectacle. "I've made this sauce hundreds of times, chef," Kevin replied in a calm voice, but his hands were shaking slightly at his sides. It was his first day at the prestigious Bordeaux restaurant, considered one of the best in New York, and this wasn't exactly the impression he wanted to make. Chef Vincent Lauron, star of 3 cooking shows and owner of a restaurant chain worth millions, approached the young man with a cruel smile on his lips. His impeccable clothes and arrogant posture contrasted brutally with the simple worn uniform Kevin had bought at a thrift store, especially for this job. "Hundreds of times where, at community culinary school," Vincent sneered, eliciting muffled laughter from some of his colleagues, "or maybe in your grandmother's kitchen making comfort food." What Vincent didn't know was about to turn the tables. Stay tuned. What Vincent didn't know was that Kevin had graduated at the top of his class from the renowned Lord & Blue Culinary Academy, paying for every penny with 3 jobs and a scholarship he earned after impressing the judges with dishes that combined classic French technique with flavors from his family heritage. "Look, kid," Vincent continued, wiping his hands on a cloth as if he had touched something dirty. "This isn't the place to experiment with recipes from your hometown. This is a serious restaurant with serious customers who pay serious money for real food." Kevin took a deep breath, and for a brief moment, something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Not anger, but a quiet determination that only exists in those who have overcome obstacles that others cannot even imagine. Growing up in the Bronx, losing his father at the age of 12, supporting his mother by working 3 different jobs while studying culinary arts. All of this had forged an inner strength that Vincent would never understand. "I understand perfectly, chef," Kevin said, lowering his head slightly. "Can I try again?" "You can, but this time follow the recipe I teach you exactly. No improvising, no exotic spices." "No." Vincent paused dramatically, looking Kevin up and down. "Unnecessary creativity." The other cooks laughed discreetly, but some of the older ones exchanged uncomfortable glances. They had known Vincent for years and knew that his cruelty toward new employees, especially those who didn't fit the restaurant's traditional profile, was a trait that tarnished his entire professional reputation. As Vincent walked away to inspect other stations, Kevin remained silent, rearranging his utensils with precise, calculated movements. His colleagues watched him with a mixture of pity and curiosity, unaware that they were witnessing the first moments of a transformation that would forever change the dynamics of that environment. What no one in the kitchen realized was that Kevin carried with him something much more powerful than refined culinary technique or secret recipes. He had a secret that would make Vincent swallow every word of contempt and deeply regret underestimating the young man he had just humiliated in front of everyone. If you're enjoying this story of twists and justice, don't forget to subscribe to the Black Voices channel to find out how a moment of humiliation would become the catalyst for a revolution that would completely change the rules of the game. In the weeks that followed, the Bordeaux kitchen became a silent battlefield where Kevin was Vincent's constant target. Every dish he prepared was dissected with methodical cruelty. Every mistake, real or imagined, became grounds for elaborate public humiliation.
"Kevin, come here immediately."
Vincent's voice cut through the noise of the kitchen during the dinner rush. Kevin dropped the knife he was using to chop onions and walked over to the main station where Vincent was holding a plate of grilled salmon. "Explain to the whole team what you call this," Vincent said, raising his voice so everyone could hear, "because I call it badly seasoned garbage that no customer should be forced to pay for." The other cooks stopped what they were doing, some with uncomfortable expressions, others clearly enjoying the spectacle.
Kevin examined the plate. The salmon was perfectly cooked, the temperature ideal, the seasoning balanced. There was nothing wrong with this dish. "Chef, may I ask specifically what the problem is?" Kevin asked respectfully. "The problem?" Vincent laughed loudly, throwing the entire plate into the trash with theatrical force. The problem is that you don't understand that in this restaurant we serve hot cuisine, not street food seasoned with whatever your cultural roots consider tasty. The words hit Kevin like invisible slaps. For 17 years, growing up in a tiny apartment in the Bronx with his mother, Sarah, a nurse who worked double shifts to pay for his cooking classes, he had dreamed of this moment. Working in a renowned restaurant, applying everything he had learned in school, showing that talent has no color or zip code. But the reality was proving to be very different from the dream. Do it again. And this time, follow my recipe. Exactly. Exactly. No improvising, no exotic spices, nothing that even remotely reminds me of where you came from, Vincent continued, moving dangerously close to Kevin's face. You're not in your community here. Here you represent my restaurant. Kevin nodded silently and returned to his station. As he seasoned a new piece of salmon, exactly as Vincent had instructed, without any personal touches, his mind drifted back to the countless nights he had spent studying classic French techniques. Cordon Bleu hadn't just been a school for him. It had been his salvation. At 15, when he landed a part-time job washing dishes at a small French bistro in Manhattan, the chef owner, a kind Frenchman named Henry, had noticed how closely Kevin watched every movement in the kitchen. Henry began teaching him basic techniques after hours, impressed by the boy's ability to absorb knowledge like a sponge. You have something special, Kevin, Henry used to say, skilled hands and more importantly an exceptional palate that can't be taught. You're born with it. It was Henry who encouraged him to enroll at Cordon Bleu, who helped him secure a partial scholarship, who coached him for interviews. During 3 intense years, Kevin had absorbed not only refined culinary techniques but also gastronomic history, wine pairing, kitchen management, and even fine dining etiquette. He had graduated at the top of his class. And now here he was being treated like a complete amateur by a chef who didn't even bother to taste his food properly before rejecting it. Kevin, Vincent shouted again. That sauce is a disgrace. Where did you learn to cook? Watching TV shows. This time some of the older cooks exchanged genuinely embarrassed glances. Tom the sous chef, who had been working at Bordeaux for 5 years, muttered under his breath, "Man, that sauce is perfect. Better than many I've made." But Vincent was far from finished. Over the next few days, he intensified his campaign of systematic humiliation. He assigned Kevin only the most basic and degrading tasks, peeling potatoes for hours, cleaning pots, organizing the stock. When Kevin showed skill at something more complex, Vincent immediately transferred him to another menial job. You're new here, Vincent said one day, intercepting Kevin as he prepared a velouté sauce with impeccable technique. You have to earn the right to touch the important preparations. Get back to the potatoes. What Vincent didn't know was that Kevin had begun to pay attention to details that went far beyond the kitchen. During breaks, he observed Vincent's interactions with different employees. He noticed how the chef treated the white cooks with at least a basic respect, even when they made obvious mistakes. He noticed how Vincent spoke differently when he thought Kevin wasn't listening. More importantly, Kevin had begun to notice certain questionable practices that Vincent employed when supervisors weren't around. One afternoon, Kevin was organizing the freezer stock when he heard Vincent on the phone in his office. The door ajar. The conversation made him stop what he was doing. No, don't hire anymore. You know, of that type, Vincent said, clearly thinking he was alone. One is enough trouble. The Bordeaux clientele has specific expectations about the kind of presentation we offer. Kevin felt his blood run cold. Not just because of the words, but because of the casual tone, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. It was at that moment that something changed inside Kevin. The constant humiliation, the veiled comments, the degrading tasks. He could put up with all that in the name of his dream of working in haute cuisine. But to find out that Vincent was actively sabotaging opportunities for others like him, that crossed a line that could not be ignored. Kevin continued organizing the freezer as if nothing had happened. But his mind was now working on a completely different frequency. He began to remember every inappropriate comment, every instance of differential treatment, every situation in which Vincent had demonstrated a clear pattern of discriminatory behavior. More importantly, he began to think about how to document it all.
That night, Kevin left the restaurant with the same calm demeanor as always, politely greeting his colleagues and thanking them for the day's work. But behind that facade of resignation, a strategy was forming. Vincent had completely underestimated who he was dealing with. What the arrogant chef couldn't see behind the simple uniform and humble origins was that Kevin possessed something that all the privileges in the world couldn't buy: a lethal combination of refined intelligence, determination forged in adversity, and most dangerous of all, the patience of someone who had learned that true justice is worth waiting for. Each new humiliation only fueled a growing strength that Vincent could never understand. The silent strength of someone who was about to turn all that injustice into fuel for something that would change not only his own life, but the entire functioning of that toxic environment that hid behind expensive dishes and a fabricated reputation. 3 weeks after overhearing that phone conversation, Kevin had developed a routine that went unnoticed by everyone at Bordeaux. He arrived 15 minutes before his shift, not to impress Vincent, that was impossible, but to observe and document. His cell phone, discreetly positioned among the utensils, captured revealing conversations. His small notebook, disguised among recipes, recorded every discriminatory comment, every instance of differential treatment. Vincent, completely oblivious to what was happening, intensified his campaign of humiliation with a cruel creativity that impressed even his most insensitive colleagues. "Kevin, I need you to prepare a bechamel sauce for today's special," Vincent announced during the lunch rush, knowing full well that Kevin had mastered that technique. "But I want Tom here to supervise you. We can't risk you overseeing it." Tom, the sous chef, was clearly uncomfortable. "Chef, I'm sure Kevin can make a bechamel on his own. He has very good technique." "Tom," Vincent replied with a cold smile. "Are you questioning my leadership? Because I can easily find another sous chef who understands the hierarchy here." Kevin prepared the sauce under unnecessary supervision. Every move commented on by Vincent as if he were a condescending teacher dealing with a child. "See, he almost burned the butter. Without supervision, we would have had to throw it all out." The sauce was perfect, as Tom discreetly confirmed with a nod of approval. But Vincent had planted the seed of doubt he wanted. Kevin was incompetent and needed to be babysat. That afternoon, after a particularly difficult day of humiliation, Kevin left the restaurant and walked to a small cafe 3 blocks from Bordeaux. There he met James Richardson, an investigative journalist specializing in reports of workplace discrimination, whom he had met through an online group of black professionals in the culinary arts. "How's our evidence gathering going?" James asked, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the notes Kevin had compiled. "It gets easier every day," Kevin replied, showing him the most recent recordings. "He doesn't care what he says when he thinks he's among his own. Yesterday, he told the manager that he hired a third white cook because we can't look like we're turning into a community center." James shook his head, clearly impressed by the systematic nature of the prejudice. "Kevin, you've got enough material here for an article that would change this guy's career forever. But I have to warn you, when we publish this, you're probably going to lose your job." "I know," Kevin replied calmly. "But it's not just about me. How many other people like me has Vincent humiliated? How many opportunities has he sabotaged?" What James didn't know was that Kevin had expanded his investigation far beyond direct discrimination. By browsing public records and talking discreetly with former employees, he discovered that Vincent had a pattern of behavior that stretched back years. Black and Latino employees rarely lasted more than a few months at Bordeaux, always fired for incompetence or not fitting in with the restaurant's culture. But Kevin had saved his most explosive discovery for last. During one of his cleaning sessions in Vincent's office, a task he voluntarily took on to gain access to privileged information, he found a folder containing resumes of rejected applicants. Their qualifications were impressive. Graduates of renowned schools, experience in prestigious restaurants, impeccable references. They all had something in common: names that suggested a non-white ethnic origin. Even more shocking were the emails Vincent exchanged with other chefs in the city, creating an informal network of recommendations that effectively barred non-white professionals from New York's best restaurants. A cartel disguised as professional networking. "Are you sure you got copies of all this?" James asked, examining the evidence with disbelief. "All documented, dated, and backed up in 3 different places, Kevin confirmed.
But James, I want more than just an article. I want Vincent to fall in front of everyone he's ever humiliated. It was then that Kevin revealed the second part of his plan. Next week is the New York Gastronomic Association's annual dinner. Vincent will be there along with all the big names in the city's culinary scene. He's receiving an award for professional excellence. Can you imagine the irony? James smiled slowly, understanding the direction the conversation was taking. You want me to publish the article the night before the dinner?
Better, Kevin replied, his eyes shining with a determination James had never seen before.
I want you to publish it on the morning of the event. I want Vincent to find out that his career is over on the very day he's supposed to be celebrated. But there was still a third part to the plan that Kevin didn't reveal even to James. Through Henry, his former mentor at the French bistro, Kevin had obtained something that would completely change the game. The French chef, now retired but still respected in the gastronomic community, had been outraged to learn of the treatment Kevin was receiving at Bordeaux. "My young man," Henry had said with his French accent heavy with emotion, "you are one of the best students I have ever had. Don't let the ignorance of others define your worth." Henry had made a few calls to former colleagues, and the result was an opportunity Vincent could never have imagined. Kevin had been discreetly invited to a private audition with the Michelin Group's new restaurant development team. The audition would take place the same week that the scandal was about to explode. While Vincent continued his daily humiliations, completely oblivious to the hurricane approaching, Kevin worked silently on his final preparations. Every insult, every discriminatory comment, every attempt to break his spirit only fueled the iron determination of someone who knew that true justice sometimes needs to be carefully orchestrated. The night before the Gastronomic Association dinner, Kevin remained in the empty kitchen of Bordeaux, practicing dishes that Vincent would never let him prepare officially. His hands moved with the precision of a surgeon and the passion of an artist. The same combination that had impressed his teachers at Lord & Blue. There, under the fluorescent lights of the kitchen, where he had been systematically humiliated, Kevin was putting the finishing touches on a transformation that had begun long before Vincent realized he was dealing with someone dangerous. It was when everyone laughed at his spicy improvisations that something extraordinary began to take shape. Not just behind the scenes of the culinary world, but mainly in the determined gaze of someone who was about to transform years of systematic discrimination into the fuel for an ascent that would make Vincent question every decision he had made based on prejudice. The morning of the Gastronomic Association's annual dinner began seemingly normal for Vincent. He woke up in his luxurious Manhattan apartment, put on his most expensive tuxedo, and practiced the acceptance speech he would give when receiving the Professional Excellence Award. At 9 o'clock in the morning, his phone began to ring incessantly. "Vincent, have you seen the article in the New York Culinary Tribune?" The association coordinator's voice was visibly shaking. "You need to come here now." 20 minutes later, Vincent was standing in front of a printed copy of the newspaper, his photo plastered on the front page next to the headline, "The Hidden Face of Haute Cuisine. How an award-winning chef built an empire on systematic discrimination." James Richardson's article was devastating. Audio recordings of Vincent mocking non-white employees. Emails exchanged with other chefs creating a network of racial exclusion. Statistics showing that in 5 years only 2 black employees had remained at Bordeaux for more than 6 months. "This is absurd slander," Vincent shouted, but his voice sounded weak even to him. "Who is this Kevin Williams? I've never heard of him." That's when the coordinator showed him the second page of the newspaper. A photo of Kevin in his uniform in the Bordeaux kitchen alongside a statement that made Vincent feel the ground disappear beneath his feet. Kevin Williams, 23 years old, graduated as the best student at Lord & Blue, chef at the Bordeaux restaurant for 2 months. "I systematically documented every discriminatory comment, every instance of differential treatment. Vincent Lauron created a toxic environment that not only harmed me, but prevented dozens of talented professionals from growing because of the color of their skin." Vincent reread the sentence 3 times. Kevin Williams, the shy boy he had publicly humiliated, who peeled potatoes in silence, who never responded to his cruel taunts. The newbie everyone had completely underestimated. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Vincent received a call from the restaurant chain's legal department. "Mr. Lauron, we need to meet immediately. 5 former employees have filed lawsuits for racial discrimination. The Bordeaux brand is being removed from all restaurant guides." At 4 in the afternoon, an official notification arrived. His participation in the dinner had been cancelled. The Professional Excellence Award would be given to another chef. At 6 o'clock in the afternoon, Vincent found out who his replacement would be. Kevin Williams, at 23, becomes the youngest executive chef in the history of the Michelin Group in the Americas, announced the official statement. After a private audition that impressed the entire international board, Williams will take over the operation of 3 new restaurants in New York with complete creative autonomy and a budget of $2 million. Vincent read the news 5 times, each word cutting deeper than the last. The boy he had forced to peel potatoes had achieved in one day what Vincent had taken 15 years to build. That night, while Vincent remained locked in his apartment, watching his career crumble in real time on social media, Kevin was in the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, wearing an elegant tuxedo, receiving compliments from renowned chefs from around the world. "How did you manage to stay calm all this time?" asked Henry, his former mentor, hugging Kevin with paternal pride. "I've learned that the sweetest revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you," Kevin replied calmly, watching the camera flashes. "It's building something so extraordinary that they realize how small they always were." James Richardson approached with a satisfied smile. "Kevin, the article already has 500,000 views. 12 New York restaurants have announced complete overhauls of their hiring policies." "And Vincent?" Kevin asked without a hint of malice in his voice. "He lost everything. The investors pulled their funding. The Bordeaux is closing next week and he's facing 6 lawsuits. Oh, and we found out he lied on his resume. He never went to the French culinary school he claimed to attend." Kevin just nodded silently. There was no sadistic satisfaction in his eyes, just the serenity of someone who understands that true justice is inevitable when built with patience and intelligence. Across town, Vincent Lauron, who had woken up just one morning earlier as an award-winning and respected chef, now faced the reality that his arrogance had not only destroyed the careers of others, but had dug his own professional grave. What Vincent discovered too late was that he had underestimated not just a cook, but a force of nature disguised as humility. And now, as Kevin built a culinary empire based on talent and inclusion, Vincent learned the most expensive lesson of his life. Those who build power on prejudice always end up buried by their own rotten foundations. But the story wouldn't end with Vincent losing everything. Kevin still had one last surprise that would completely redefine the meaning of turning injustice into purpose. Proving that a few moments of humiliation don't destroy extraordinary people. They just reveal what they are truly capable of. 6 months after the scandal that rocked the New York culinary world, Kevin Williams walked through the 3 kitchens of the new Michelin Group restaurants he now ran. They weren't just establishments. They were laboratories of inclusion where young talents from all backgrounds found real opportunities for growth. "Chef Kevin, Gastronomy International magazine wants to do a cover story on our inclusive hiring philosophy," said Lisa, his new communications manager, a young Latina whom Kevin had promoted from sous chef in just 4 months. Kevin smiled, looking out the panoramic window of the office that had once seemed impossible to achieve. But make it clear that we are not a social experiment. We hire the best regardless of where they come from." At that very moment, across town, Vincent Lauron was sitting in a tiny apartment in Queens, watching the food news on his cracked cell phone. The story was about Kevin receiving the Young Chef of the Year award for the 2nd time in a row. Kevin Williams has not only revolutionized New York's haute cuisine, but has set a new standard of inclusive leadership that is being replicated in restaurants around the world, announced the presenter. Vincent turned off his phone and looked around the small space where he now lived. After losing everything: restaurants, home, career, he had managed to find only a job as a contract cook on a food truck. Ironically, he was now literally on the same level where he had tried to keep Kevin imprisoned. 3 weeks earlier, Vincent had tried to approach Kevin at a food event. "Kevin, I wanted to apologize. I know I was terrible to you." Kevin had stopped, looked Vincent in the eye with his usual serenity, and replied, "Vincent, you don't need to apologize to me. You need to apologize to all the talented people you never hired because of your prejudice. The response cut deeper than any insult. Back in his office, Kevin received the call he had been waiting for months. Kevin, it's Henry. I have an interesting proposal for you. Henri, his former mentor, was now working as a consultant for a special project, creating a network of scholarships for young people from disadvantaged communities interested in gastronomy. We need someone who understands both the technique and the struggle. Someone who proves that excellence has no address. I accept, Kevin replied without hesitation, but on one condition: I also want to create a mentoring program so that no young person has to go through what I went through. At the end of that day, Kevin was in the kitchen of his main restaurant, not preparing a complex dish, but teaching the basics to 5 young apprentices, 2 from the Bronx, a Somali refugee, an ex-convict in rehabilitation, and a transgender girl who had been kicked out of her home at 16. The first lesson in professional cooking isn't about technique, Kevin explained as he demonstrated how to hold a knife properly. It's about respect. Respect for the ingredients, for your colleagues, for your customers, and most importantly, for yourselves. Tom, the former sous chef at Bordeaux, who had witnessed the humiliations, now worked as executive chef at one of Kevin's restaurants. Do you know the difference between you and Vincent? He asked during a break. Vincent built an empire based on exclusion. You're building a legacy based on opportunity. 6 months after the night that changed everything, Kevin received an unexpected message. It was from a young black female cook in Chicago. Chef Kevin, your example gave me the courage to speak out about discrimination at the restaurant where I work. Today, I got my first job at an establishment that values me. Thank you for showing that we can turn things around. It was the 10th similar message that week. Vincent that same day was serving burgers at the food truck when he recognized a customer, James Richardson, the journalist who had written the devastating article. Vincent Lauron, James asked incredulous. You work here now? It's all I have left, Vincent replied, lowering his eyes in shame. I lost everything. My career, my money, my reputation. Even my family turned their backs on me. James paid for the burger and before leaving said, You lost everything because you built everything on something rotten. Kevin is proving that you can build something much greater when you base it on real merit, not prejudice. That night, Kevin was at home, a comfortable but unostentatious apartment, when he got a call from his mother. Son, I saw you on TV again. Your father would be proud. Mom, remember when I cried after that first day in Bordeaux? You said that sometimes people have to underestimate us to find out what we're capable of. And you proved you were right, she replied emotionally. Kevin hung up and looked out the window. Below, New York pulsed with the energy of millions of dreams being pursued. Some would be realized, others broken, but he had learned the most valuable lesson of all. The best revenge is not to destroy those who hurt you, but to build something so extraordinary that it renders irrelevant all the smallness they try to impose on you. Vincent had tried to humiliate him publicly, reduce his value, keep his talent hidden. In response, Kevin didn't just rise up. He built an entire platform so that others like him could shine, too. The real revolution wasn't the fall of Vincent Lauron. It was the rise of a movement that proved that when you open doors to those with real talent, regardless of their background, you don't just change individual lives, you transform entire industries. And Kevin Williams, the young man who once peeled potatoes in silence while being humiliated for his background, now ran not just restaurants, but a new philosophy that redefined what excellence means in American cuisine. If this story of transformation and justice has touched you, subscribe to the Black Voices channel for more stories that prove that our background does not determine our destiny.